this lecture, and this is another one of my class videos where I have to make a lesson. This one's going to be a manipulative lesson, and in the lesson we're going to have students create, measure, and find the area of composite shapes. So like all the other videos in this series of things for my class, we're going to imagine that I'm in a classroom with 7th graders and not in my living room again. So this lesson would serve as like a review at the end of like a 6 weeks period where the students are going to be tested on area of shapes. Something to keep in mind throughout this lesson for this video is that the tangrams I have are obviously not real tangrams. I don't have a set of tangrams on hand, so I had to make some, so they're going to be paper. And whenever I measure them, in theory there should be like whole numbers, but if they're not and they're slightly off in the video, just know it's human error. So to kick off this lesson, I'd start by passing out a star formula sheet and a bag of tangrams to like groups of 4 to 5 students. Students will then be given time to move them around and play with the tangrams just to see like how they fit together, what they do, all of that good stuff. That way they have time to play around and make the composite shape that they want to work with for the day. So let me show you what I mean here. Here's my tangrams on my desk, and I can move them around and manipulate them in whatever way I want, and I can make shapes out of them. So for example, we can make this little square here out of the shapes. We can make what I just did, a duck, or we can do like the little airplane. There's just a whole lot of shapes that they can make, but these are some of the possibilities. The next step in this lesson is to have the students pull out a piece of paper and title it inventory list. On this piece of paper, students will be able to trace their shapes and measure it out and fill in the dimensions. So after giving this instruction, I would obviously show them what I want by doing a few examples myself. So let's just go ahead and do that. So for this lesson, if this was the little picture I made this little duck. I'm going to go through this duck and take one piece at a time and trace it. So let's go ahead and do that. So this piece came looking like this, so we need to put it like that. And we're just going to trace the shape. So now that we have our triangle, we're going to measure him out and write the dimensions of it. So this side is 4 centimeters, and this side is also 4 centimeters, and this side is 6 centimeters. We're going to do that for all of the pieces of our duck. So then we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for the next part of his body. And then measure out this piece. So this one's also 6 centimeters. And this is going to be 4 centimeters. And also 4 centimeters. So the best part of this lesson is it's tackling a whole bunch of skills. It's having them measure stuff out, and then later on they're going to do some math with area. So they're able to practice their measuring skills, also be able to make these little pictures and play with the manipulative, but practice on those measuring and area skills. Alrighty, so this is our last shape. Measuring this guy out too. now that we have our whole ducks pieces inventory and our inventory is complete, we're ready to move on to the next step. So now it's the fun part. Now it's time to do the area and do the math. This is where our formula reference sheet comes in handy, as now we need to find the area. So we're going to look at all of these formulas here for area to find the area of all of the shapes in our inventory list. So let me show you. Okay, so for our first shape in our inventory list is this triangle. So we're going to go to area, triangle. Area is 1/2 the base times the height. So A equals 1/2 base times height. So the base is 6. The height would be from base to this point. So for a lot of these triangles, we might need to do an additional measurement here. And we know that this is going to be from 1, 2, 3. So 3 centimeters is that, and then 1/2. The way I like to write it is generally not saying the 1/2 because fractions tend to confuse people. So just 6 times 3 divided by 2. So obviously 6 times 3 is 6, 12, 18 divided by 2. Equals 9. So our area past the margin is where we're going to keep all our areas. So area for this guy is 9 centimeters squared. So if we notice here, our centimeters for our base and centimeters for our base, and our sides are the same. So these two pieces of our duck are actually the same size. So we don't really have to do all the math. So we're just going to, same thing. And our area for this guy is also going to be 9 centimeters squared. So now we're going to go on through with the rest of them. We just covered how to do an area of a triangle, so I'm just going to skip this one over real quick and do parallelogram. So for the area of a parallelogram, it's just area is base times height. So 2 times 3. So 3 and 6. So I finished my inventory list with my math on it, but I did want to make a little mini note here is that some of the shapes that we might be using, like this one, are composite shapes of their own. So we might have to break them down and measure them as separate shapes. So measure this as the square and then measure this as the triangle in order to find the area, and then just add them together to find the area of this total piece of shape. So for the next step, now that we have all of our inventory lists, we're going to flip over the paper and make our composite shape because we need to have that shape too as representation. So we're going to trace all the pieces but side by side now to make our actual shape. So I'm just going to go around like the edges of my shape once I have all the little pieces and outline it so we could see like a darker outline of our shape. So mine looks closest to a duck, so I'm just going to kind of draw a little eye and a little smiley face. So now I have a duck. So I'm going to label mine as my duck because some of the shapes that they might have created might not be visible to everybody what they actually made. So what they think they see in their picture might not be exactly what we see. So have them label it. So I see a duck. Somebody else might see something else. I don't know. I see a duck. So now that we have our full picture, we need to go back and reference all these areas because that's going to be the area of our duck. So 9 and 9. So 9, 9, 3, 6, 4, and 2. So these are all the areas that we have. And in order to find our total area, we just simply add them all up. So to make this quick, I'm just going to do it in the calculator. 9 plus 9 plus 3 plus 6 plus 4 plus 2. Our duck's area is 33 centimeters squared. So this is our final product. So now we have our duck's area. So this full piece of paper with our math, all our areas, our pictures, and our final product is ready to be turned in. When you have them turn it in, have them turn in their paper, and then as a group, somebody will collect all the pieces and someone will turn in the pieces of our tangram group set with their paper. That way everything gets returned. Some accommodations that I wanted to mention for this lesson are with the SPED kids, we might have to provide like an example like this one where we have it where you can see the pieces, but it's a one full picture so they can see what the actual shape is. A lot of them have a hard time visualizing in their head just by looking at little pieces what the big picture might be. So if I gave this to a SPED student and say, you can remake this and give them the pieces they need to remake it, then I can take this away and they have their pieces to do their assignment. Another thing I wanted to mention is it's probably going to be easier to do this lesson when we did the way I did it, where I broke down the instructions and said just trace everything, then solve for the area, then add them. Because if you give the list of a long list of instructions to the kids, they might get overwhelmed or get confused. Whereas just breaking it down, your one assignment is to draw the pictures, then you have to do the math for the pictures, and then you just add up all the areas for the pictures. It's easier for them to stay on track. As for my gifted kids, I would say maybe throw in some rounded shapes and see if they can see that these are half circles and that if you put them together it's a circle, and see if they can find the area of like their circles as well, as most of the time this lesson doesn't include circles whenever they're discussing the area because circles has their own separate lesson. This concludes my lesson. It's not that difficult, it's just a whole lot of small steps. Thank you for watching.